So the testnav problems, you may already have seen the answer to number 22, but I'm just showing it again. And then afterwards, if you have any questions on any of these, how to proceed them, or how do you do it in desmos, like that. So 22 was C. You have to first translate the given expression into, or the given words into an equation, and then put that equation either into desmos or in your calculator and find 3 points that would fit this. So you just need to plot any of those 3. 24 was D. 25 was also D. 26, you had to plot 2 points that would make this a direct variation. So since it's direct, it has to be a line that goes to the origin. I would start with the origin. That would be the easiest point. And then just plot one other. You shouldn't have a line drawn because it didn't ask for that, just points. And then 27 and 28 were both. Have any questions on any of those, or any you want to see at desmos?
Go back.
So 25, if you were to type in these points into the table, so I already have mine up, but you would add a table and add in those points. So in those points, I see they're making a curve. And you could do one of 2 things. Either determine if it's direct or inverse and then figure out which one it would be. Put in the answer choices and see which one matches. So there are your 2 options. And of the 2 options, the points fall on the curve rather than the line. So it would have to be D. I think the other one said direct but this. Yeah, so if it was direct, it would have to be a line. And inverse, it would look something more like 10 equals xy. So that's why it was also. Other testnav questions?
I don't first time for
That is inverse.
and then the direct would just not go through the
Direct will be a line that goes to the origin. So, 21 was not something we did this time, but you just put those in and see which one crosses at X. Other questions on this? So with 27, you do a couple different things. So I already have mine set in here. But you would type in your table, and then you could either type in your answer choices into the multi choice and see which of those does it match. So my original points were these red dots. And the only one that goes over those red dots is the blue one. And I would say that's my answer. Or you could use your quadratic curve of best fit. Mine is 2 because I have a bunch of tables in this, and I'm using 2, but yours would be 1 if you only have one table. You would put in your table, put in your quadratic curve of best fit, and it would give you the same thing as
Why are there two instead of modules for the y's and x's of that equation?
because I have multiple tables in this whole thing. So every time you add a table, it changes this. So if you only had 1, it would say 1.
Right.
But whatever your table is, that's you have to match the x and y. Other questions? Many of us were not here due to SOL last class, so I just wanted to reiterate a couple things. Thursday, your JLab sheet is due. Remember, that's formative. And your 8-ball packet is due, and that will be summative, and it will be an average of all of the grades in that. You need to get to at least a 7. If you do more than that, great. But if you do less than that, it will be averaging the zeros in there. So make sure you get to at least a 7 in the 8-ball packet, a 7. So make sure you're working on those. Come see me after school today. If you have any questions about that, you'll have time to have some time at the end as well. So we're going to continue doing what we were last class, which is going through the Desmos hacks and then any questions you guys have. So those that weren't here, you can go back and watch the video to see any that we already did. But we will continue that, and any questions you do have, find that in that packet and see what questions you want to see. You go over, review, maybe you don't remember how to do this, how do you do this in Desmos, anything like that. Especially for those that weren't here, start going through each page, find any that you want to see, to go over, doesn't look familiar. Simplifying radicals, number 4. So we can go back to number 1. So you can use the Desmos hack. You could also try to eliminate as is. Right now, all the insides look as simplified as possible. So I would type the original into desmos if this was multiple choice. And make sure you use capital X and capital Y. And then add in all the sliders, change them to be positive numbers. Really, the X and the Z, you could make them either or, but the Y would have to be positive, otherwise it would be undefined. And then you can start typing in your answer choices to see which one matches. So just typing in A, that happened to be the first one that matched, so that would be your answer. If this was not multiple choice, you would need to remember your simplifying radical rules, simplify it by hand, and then you can put your final answer in using the decimal slider hack and see if your answer matches. How do you match? By decimals or by hand? Which one?
Like the first one, like how do you see this the same?
How do you know that's the answer?
Yeah.
Decimal. Anyone want to see that one done by hand? Yes. So you would find the highest perfect square that goes into 50 if it's not already a perfect square, which would be 25 and 2. And I'm just going to use perfect squares and the index and see how many times it goes into whatever. So 2 goes into 2 once, so that would be just 1x. 2 goes into 7 3 times with 1 left over. And 2 goes into 8 4 times. So the square root of 25 would be 5, and everything on the outside would go next to the 5. So x, y to the third, z to the fourth, and everything still underneath the radical would stay there. So just looking at what I have so far, I could eliminate c and b. So it have to be A or B, and then what's left, 2y. Not 2. So. Other questions? Anyone in particular?
Just in general, I don't.
So you should have all of these listed. For the properties of inequality, it doesn't have them listed, but they're the same thing except the very last one. So commutative is anytime the order changes. Associative is anytime you have something in parentheses and you switch it with something else. So like a set of parentheses gets moved. The identities, pretty self-explanatory. The distributed property, we know. The properties of equality, you're doing whatever to both sides, adding to both sides, subtracting to both sides. Substitution is just something you know. So 2 times 2 is 4, you know that, substitution. Or when you simplify, or when you combine the terms, any of those. Probably not. Reflexive is equal to itself, so like 5 equals 5, 0 equals 0. Symmetric is like A equals 5 and 5 equals A. It just switches the placement of it. And then transitive is an if and then statement. If this and this, then this. And it depends on what's going on. Something like that, if you got something like that, so it wouldn't be more like 10 through 15, it would be more multiple choice, or drag and drop which of these properties fits whatever happened. 8.5, number 18. The systems. So A5D. We will do that when we get back. In number A5D, number 18, is asking which of the following are solutions to the given system. So put both of these into desmos, and we're going to just put the order pairs in. So we have these two. You're looking for where they overlap, and do any of these points fall in that overlapping? So you could type them in and see, do they fall in there? Or just kind of look at it, estimate it to see if it does. You could label them if you so choose. This one falls on the line of the outside of it, and it falls on the dotted line. If you were to check that algebraically, that would not work, so that would not be a solution. And you have -2, -1. -1. Yes. And that one falls on the outside, but on the solid line. So that one would be a solution if you put it into both. It would be true for both, but the first one would not. So that one is -1, 0. Falls outside of that overlapping, so that would not be 1. And then the last one, -3, -5. Falls inside that shaded area, so that would be 1. So -2, -4, and -3, -5.
So the answer is the one that's going to be in the shaded area of both?
Of both, yes.
Or on the line that is on the edge?
On the line on the edge that's solid.
So
So negative 2 wasn't because it was on the line without a dash.
Yeah, and I could also put this into this, so if I were to put negative 2 into both of these, you have negative 4 times negative 2, I'm just going to put minus 2. So this would be positive 8 minus 2 is greater than or equal to 4. This is a true statement. But I'm going to guess the second one is not. So here we have negative 2 is less than negative 3 plus 1. Negative 2 is not less than negative 3, so it doesn't work. It's equal to. If it was equal to, it would work, but it's not. Great. Faith, repeat the one that you wanted to do.
8.2C, 19 and 20.
Say the number again.
19 and
19 and 20. So the first one is not in, it's not multiple choice, so you have to do that one by hand. You could do this a couple of ways. You could put this in to desmos. Look at what those x-intercepts are and start with that and then kind of work your way backwards. So x negative 2 and 0.25. Write those both as factored format. So the x equals negative 2, that would just be the opposite, x plus 2. This one, when you go to write it, you're going to want to write it as a fraction. But you don't want to leave it like that. Yeah, 4x. And I should have made that negative. In general, to get that to the other format, set it equal. I'm just writing in a space because I don't have other space. Set it equal to 0. Solve for x. As opposed to say 1/4, right? And then move it back to start solving for 0. So multiply both sides by 4. And then get rid of the 1 by subtraction. So then your other factor will be 4x. So if you wanted to use desmos, that would be the way to do it. Or you would just have to do it by hand. I don't really have space for this, but I'm going to kind of do an off to the side here. You would use your a equals 1 factoring method. There isn't a GCF, and you would multiply 4 and negative 2, and find 2 factors of negative 8 that would add and subtract to be 7. And 8 and negative 1 would do that. Rewrite it into 4 terms. x minus 2. And then factor by grouping, by splitting it down the middle. Find the GCF of the first side, which will be 4 and x. Leaving, we're dividing both of these by 4x, so leaving x plus 2. And then GCF of the last two would be -1, leaving x plus 2, which would give you your final answers. Now, once you have your final factors, you could put that in and see if it overlaps with the original. And if it does that, then you know you did that right. The only issue with finding things that overlap is if I were to put in the x minus 1 quote, I think you get the same thing. So just remember that one. So if you get the fraction and you put that in, it won't exactly overlap, so you would have to change that. So those, you either have to use that rule in Desmos or do it by hand. 20, because it is multiple choice, you could put in the original and put in the different answer choices and see which one overlaps. I'm just going to start typing in our different answer choices and see what happens. X plus 6. And there'll be 2 that work, and I'm going to show you what we need to figure out with that. That one doesn't match at all, so I can get rid of that. And then x plus 5, x plus 6. That one doesn't overlap it perfectly. And then if I look at the last one, does. So there are 3 different things happening there. So the one that would match it the best is the most simplest. I could divide 2 out of this, so that's not the most simplest. So it would be this one, D.
So do 22.
Sure.
If most of them work, then why are they only 3?
So not all of them work, only 2 work. We have our original, this.
So I did only give a DNA. If 2 of them work.
This one worked. This one did not work because it doesn't overlap. This one did not work because it doesn't overlap. But this one does overlap. That's why it was just those 2. But it can't be this one because I can divide 2 out of this. 22, type in the original into Desmos. you were asked which is a factor of, you could put in the different factor choices. So type in your different answers. X plus 10. I'm just going to put in all of them for now. Minus 10 plus 3. And plus minus 7. And of these, you want whichever one goes through your quadratic, your parabola, at the x-axis. And there's only one that does that. So that would be your answer. This is a good way to find your factors also. If you just factor it by hand, put in your each factor to see does it cross the x-axis or not. 8.2b, polynomials question 8. This on the previous page. This you can use the slider trick for, but because you're just multiplying the outside to whatever's inside, it would just be easier to do it right here. So if I were to multiply this, I get 10. You have to multiply the numbers and add the exponents using your exponent rule. So 10a to the 5th b squared. Very rare. And it stopped, whatever it was. Earthquake. I've been through earthquakes before. It might be. Okay.
Well, to be fair, if it was an earthquake, it could last like multiple seconds. But it would be back to back.
Yeah, and they would have to. Then what is this?
It could be a thunderstorm. I've never experienced a
This
thunderstorm.
is shake.
Okay.
Okay, that happened. Very focused. For this, because we got 10, A and C would be eliminated. And then we focus on B or D. So at that point, you could either stop and say, I know it's between these two, put it in desmos, see which one works, or just keep going. So the next one would be 20 A to the 4th, B to the 3rd, which would have to be B. So go ahead and type in the original into desmos. I'm just going to do that. Yes.
Will these all be multiple choice on the test?
No. Some will be type in the correct response, drag and drop, choose all. There are so many different variations. But even some of the multiple choice things you can still do with just like type in answers, because you can still check your answer in Desmos. Okay, so if I type in the original, add in all the sliders, change them to something positive, and then we said it was B. So I start typing in B. Oh, not like that. say use positive numbers just in case you have odd exponents, because then you might end up with a negative instead of a positive somewhere. But in this case, it's simple. It also depends on what you're doing.
Can we do 13?
On the same page. You can use that same desmos slider trick for this one. I'm gonna do it and just so you can either find the GCF of the numerator, factor that out, and then divide and see what's left, or just divide it separately. I'm gonna do it that way. If I started to divide them separately, 21 over 3 is going to give me 7, so it gets rid of C and D. And then this would be a squared, we're subtracting the exponents. The b's would completely cancel. The only one that has 7a squared by itself is a, so I wouldn't even have to do one.
What happens if there were two answers that like got you the same? Like
That both has 7a squared, or you're talking about in decimals.
Just like how would you know which one is simplified more?
So in this case, you have to use your exponent rules, and it's just divide it and simplify it. So if you had 2 of these that both had 7a squared, you would just go to the next one and see which one it matches. So the next part would be 4a. Sorry, I can't read what number. The next one would be 4ab. Which those are the same, but the first one wasn't, so that's why we could say we don't have to keep them. Kate, did you have a question? No. Okay. Other questions? Can we just send it to the same? Sure. So 17, if you want to do that in desmos, you would just type it in as is, but with one big fraction. You could use the parentheses, you don't need them, but you can use them. Depending on how you decide. So then you can do a couple different things. You can look at the line. Sorry. You can look at the line that's left, and I will remember this goes okay. And calculate slope and y-intercept. So y-intercept would be at -3. The slope is 1 of your partial lines. X minus 3 would be your answer. You could also type in your answer choices and see which one overlaps.
Don't we have to change it? Like, wouldn't it be x plus 3?
You already have x plus 3. The x. So if you were factoring, if you did this by hand, you would have factored and got x plus 3, x minus 3, all over x plus 3. And those would cancel.
Oh.
anything where it asks you to find the roots or solutions, x-intercepts, y-intercepts, zeros. Type that into Desmos and see where does it cross either the x or y axis. If you want, you can put equals 0, or you can just put the first part. It doesn't matter. Bless you. So you could leave it like this, or you can put equals 0 at the end. You may have to zoom out. So you should see two things. Roots are zeros, which are solutions, which are x-intercepts. So where does it cross the x-axis? And then you would write these in curly brackets, least to greatest. Negative 16 and 2.5. Or they may say leave your answer as a fraction, so 5 halves instead. So you can access it wherever you want to go.
What if we made graphing calculator?
Yes. Other questions? Almost all of you should be taking it in the afternoon. But just on your class.
We do 846B.
That's it for everybody.
846B.
8.6, 14. So anything with writing the equation on line, you can definitely do it by hand, but double check it in Desmos or if you would type in your point, negative 6.5. And we want an equation, so that's going to be r y equals mx plus b, equation of a line. So go ahead and type that in, y equals mx plus b. Add in all your sliders. They tell us that the slope is negative 1/3, so m, change that to negative 1/3. And then move your b, either by hitting play or manually moving it until it goes through that point. So at 3, so then your equation would be y equals negative 1/3 x plus 3. and then you can start putting each one in and see which one matches. Not A.
It's not C.
For the last one or this one or any of the ones that we just did, are there any of those that we want to see go back in? So we would need to simplify both square roots. I'm just going to use perfect squares. Find the highest perfect square that goes into 45 and to 20. That would be 9 and 5 for 45, and then 4 and 5 for 20. The square root of 9 and the square root of 4 give you whole numbers. So 3 times 3 times the square root of 5 minus 2 times the square root of 5. And then multiply and then simplify. So 9 square root of 5 minus 2 square root of 5. And then you just subtract the numbers outside. Other questions? Don't have any other questions right at this moment. I'm going to give you the rest of the class to, you can keep working in this, work on JLabs, work on 8-ball packet, work on desmos. Come see me with any questions you have.